Hello, Create Schools. Today I want to tell you a little bit about the Vietnam War. We're going to concentrate on the Vietcong and the U.S. tactics. Okay, first we're going to look at the Vietcong tactics. Okay, please take notes on all of the words that we have written here and go ahead and listen to what I'm telling you, just to give you some more information. The Viet Cong tactics were mainly guerrilla warfare. Guerrilla warfare kind of just means you sneak around in the jungles and attack where you can and then suddenly go back and disappear. So in the guerrilla warfare, the Vietnamese soldiers did not wear uniforms. So as you can see there in the bottom left, those are just actual normal clothes. Notice there are young kids, young men. And basically this allows them to blend in with everything. And these tactics were very frustrating to the American soldiers. It was very hard when the enemy just keeps popping out and killing you, and just it was a very foreign tactic for them and very frustrated them. Okay, if you need to finish taking these notes, pause the video and I'll go on to the next slide. Okay. The Viet Cong people, they got their supplies from the north along the Ho Chi Minh Trail. If you missed that information, you can go back to the previous video and take a look at it. The Viet Cong were very nice and helpful to the peasants. As you can see here on the left, here is the Viet Cong helping peasants out. You can't really tell who's Viet Cong or who are peasants. And that is one of the tricks that they did. They blended right in, so the Viet Cong people can go ahead and jump out, attack Americans, and then quickly retreat, go into a village, hide in there, and people will not know who the Viet Cong are or who the peasants are. Not everyone was part of the Viet Cong, and of course not just young men were part of the Viet Cong. So even the women or the older men could be part of it. So the Ho Chi Minh was very committed to all of this, and the people were very committed, and he would do whatever it took for the entire country to be united under communism. So often that means a lot of people were killed, a lot of the villagers were killed, but actually a lot of the southern Vietnamese were on the communist side, so they were all willing, even if they were not a Viet Cong themselves. Okay, if you haven't taken all the pictures or taken all of the notes, go ahead and pause the video. Okay, there's not a lot to write here, just the Viet Cong tactics. About they made tunnels. Tunnels was one of the other huge ways that they were able to win. If you can see, here is a tunnel entry and here's another tunnel entry. They hide them so no one knows where they are. And you have ventilation shafts, you have entries, smoke removal vents, here's kitchen underground, trap doors, storage rooms, sleeping areas, very narrow passages, also wider passages, false tunnels, waters. So, huge underwater system, huge underground system, so they can just hide. So the Viet Cong, even if there were no villages, they can just suddenly disappear because they suddenly disappear into these underground tunnel systems. If the Americans go in it, it was very dangerous. They did have some Americans called tunnel rats, and they would go in and try to raid, but if you see it's such a narrow passage, you're almost setting yourself up to be killed. Okay, next slide. Traps were created as well, so I have a picture of an actual trap, what one looked like. These would be covered, of course, because people would just walk around them if they saw it, but cover them and you fall in. Here is an example. So these are sharpened stakes, often put with poison on it. And here he is laying wood sticks over it, so then he can cover it with leaves, so then as you step on it you fall into it. There's also where you can put a hole underneath it and have this base. So then when you step on the base, it not only spikes you, but then it also stabs your legs. Quite vicious, these traps. Of course, that also the American soldiers, the young GIs, they hear about this and they're not too pleased about that either. So we'll go on to the, oh, excuse me, I'm sorry, the Viet Cong soldier, just to wrap it up. They are usually young men who are fighting for something they believe. They're willing to die for what they believe. Okay? These Viet Cong, excuse me, the Viet Cong, they knew the area, they knew how to survive, and they actually knew all of the people, because they are fighting around their village area. So have an idea of an untrained young soldier, but very tricky, knowing how to set traps, knowing how to escape, knowing the thing, but the most important thing, they believed in what they fought for, and they were willing to die for it. Okay, next we'll go into the U.S. tactics. Bombing, carpet bombing, was one of the biggest tactics they had, and I have pictures. So basically, the difference between regular bombing and carpet bombing is here. There are tons and tons of bombs being dropped, and they cover a large, massive area, versus normally you target just one bomb and you blow up one thing. This was targeted for the industrial areas in North Vietnam, also in cities and towns where there were a lot of Viet Cong. They targeted the Ho Chi Minh Trail and also Laos and Cambodia. If you remember, the Ho Chi Minh Trail runs through Laos and Cambodia, so that area was also carpet bombed. This only slowed the Viet Cong down. It did not stop them. Remember, this was started with Operation Rolling Thunder for the 3-year carpet bombing campaign. And basically all it did was anger the Viet Cong even more, making them more willing to even fight. Okay, pause if you need to take these notes. Okay, the next U.S. tactic was called search and destroy. Basically, the Americans were told of enemies. Oh, there's an enemy in this area. They get flown in by helicopters. They come in, they basically destroy the entire village, and they seize the weapons, and they kill any Viet Cong they had. But often these raids had bad information, and the inexperienced U.S. troops were walking into traps, and many times, or majority of times, were innocent villagers in there, and that they were thought to be a Viet Cong. And so for every Viet Cong weapon captured, 6 people died, mainly civilians. So, surprise, surprise, this made the U.S. very unpopular with the peasants. So here you have the Viet Cong who are helping you and supporting you, and you have the United States military and the Southern Vietnamese military that are coming in and killing people and destroying your home, or if you're one of the lucky ones, you were moved in the strategic hamlet program to some other place that you really didn't want to be to begin with. So think about this. Who would you want to support? Again, very unwise moves that the United States did. Okay, please pause the video and finish these notes if you have not already taken them. Okay, and to make matters worse, the United States used chemical weapons. Basically, these are the defoliators I was talking about in the overview. This is the most famous photograph of the Vietnam War. This is a little girl who had ripped her burning clothes off after being bombed with napalm. The 2 chemical weapons they used were Agent Orange and napalm. Agent Orange was the picture of the orange gas coming out of the airplane in the introduction video. Hence why it's called Agent Orange. It is a highly toxic weed killer that was sprayed all over Vietnam to get rid of all of their plant life so they could see better, so the Americans can see the Viet Cong better. And napalm was also used. Napalm was horrible. It burned straight through your skin to your bones, killing you. So here is a little girl that was sprayed with napalm. Both of these haven't quite said this. They burn, so of course they burst into flames. Okay, so So this is a little girl that's clothes were burnt and she ripped them off so she wouldn't be burned to death. So this was 1972 if you have not seen the caption already. So Agent Orange and napalm. So again, another thing that makes the peasants just absolutely love the Americans. Let's go on to the next slide. Please pause if you are not done taking the notes. Okay, so in the beginning, the U.S. troops were mainly professional soldiers. Then in 1967, the draft was introduced, and mainly it was young boys who were poor and immigrants, and they didn't care about Vietnam, democracy, or communism, and they just wanted to go home. Okay, if you remember the Vietnamese, the Viet Cong, they were they were also young boys, so they were all young, but the Viet Cong really, really, really wanted to win, and the Americans just wanted to go home, and they didn't want to be there to begin with. They had very low morale. They were, every time they walked, they could fall into a trap. They get told tips, and they ended up being killed because it was a trap. Well, so okay, we had the booby traps and then the traps of the village. And what the Americans were doing was resulting them in losing the war. Everything the Americans are doing lessen the support of the southern Vietnamese peasants, and people start wondering, why are we even here? Okay, once you take these, please, excuse me, if you are not done taking these notes, please pause it, and I'll go on. So just to reiterate what I've said about the U.S. soldiers, they're usually a young man that is required to be there to fight. He does not care what he is fighting for. He doesn't care about it, and he only wants to go home. The U.S. soldier was not used to the conditions in Vietnam, and he was not prepared for the environment. That's the other thing to point out. The southern Vietnamese, this was their home. This is where they've grown up. This is the normal environment that they live in. The Americans, most have never seen a jungle before in their life. It was hot and wet and very uncomfortable. So that sets up the U.S. tactics versus the Vietnamese tactics. If you have any questions, please let me know.